Hello again. This is Chad Everett Brochures. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia and also the author of, or the up-and-coming book, The Human Manual and the Introduction to the Human Manual. So today I wanted to talk very briefly, well, kind of briefly from my videos, if you guys are familiar with them at this point, about why we lose interest in relationships. We lose interest in this regularly, and everyone that's watching this, I will assert, has experienced this, where we meet somebody and we're extremely excited about certain things. So what I'll tell you is I'm going to give you a reference point for a very underappreciated author. This individual is Moshe Feldenkrais. The book that I'm referencing for, in particular for this video, is The Potent Self. Now, this video, or this particular book, it's a fantastic book, by the way. It goes into quite a few things about human behaviorisms and self-development. Some of the majority of this is kind of an inherent genetic development that we just have as a species. Due to, and I'll go over some of those reasons in a minute. And there's another great book that's not really pertinent to this one, but yet it still has value to this video. And that's another one by Moshe Feldenkrais, which is Body and Mature Behavior. Now, this one is a study of anxiety, sex, gravitation, and learning. The Potent Self is a study of spontaneity and compulsion. So what's really great about this particular, these books, and what I'm going to discuss in this particular video, is one thing that really got a good grip into me, like really inspired me to consider specific aspects of our development. A little bit about the background between what I was going to reference earlier, as far as Moshe Feldenkrais, his time frame, to give you a particular location of his lifespan when he lived and when he was becoming aware in his field. People were becoming aware of him in his field. Is he actually worked with Sigmund Freud for a bit, and then they shifted ways or parted ways once they got to specific conclusions. Whenever Freud really started leveraging on sexuality being related to parental figures or being related to early development, and kind of became almost dogmatic about what he was trying to teach people, Moshe Feldenkrais went another direction. Very interesting man, extremely interesting man. That's why I say he's underappreciated. Is going into the developmental aspects of the psyche and the human being, and what it is that we utilize as far as like understanding and navigating our existence, our realities. Is we use predominantly and very heavily our sensory systems. You know, the five main senses that we use. As far as, it's not saying that we have no other senses. We have a lot of senses, but we have five main senses that we actually utilize navigating, and also what we also use for articulating our experience so that we can better communicate it. So we use five main senses. Now, you know, as those that are aware or that are not aware, the five senses are the sense of touch, taste, smell, sound, and sight. All right. There's also intuition, but that's a little more challenging to express, at least initially, and it's not necessary for this particular video. So let's get to an example. All right. These are all developmental aspects, so just bear with this as I go through the breakdown on it. So you meet somebody and say that you're in a position where either you're single or you're interested in being single. All right. So your concept of what is valuable in a relationship versus what's currently available and valuable in your relationship if you're in one, and what is not being expressed. Self-expression is extremely important in a relationship, because to suffocate your self-expression is to suffocate the relationship, because you are a part of that relationship. You're 100% part of your own portion of the relationship, and 50% part with another person or human being. So as you are in a relationship that does not suit your desires for your life experiences, then you'll start to you'll start to seek out outside of the relationship. Whether most of the time that starts in mind first, and you kind of role play a bit in your own mind about how another relationship could be versus how the relationship is with the person that you're with. So you start creating a chasm between yourself and this other person, and a fantasy grows. And then as you meet someone else, or you could very well be single. Either way, at this point, the example runs tandemly with being single, is when you meet someone that is what you've always desired initially and superficially in a relationship, you're likely to fill in the voids for everything you don't know. You do this with authors. I did it with myself in my own experience with being introduced to an author that I followed for a great deal of time. The individual's name's Paul Check, and I absolutely still love his work, and I still follow his work. But he was one of my first experiences of actually following an author outside of like some ridiculous magazines that I followed in my 20s. But for this particular moment, I followed this particular author for a great deal of time. And I would listen to him on YouTube. I would read his books. I would read his articles that were put out. I would buy his DVD series that for educational values. And it was all wonderful stuff, and I still value it, and I still refer people to it. But I became so close to the idea of who he was. Now, not who he is, but who he was, or who I thought he was, which is the idea of him. Most people fall in love with the idea of a person. This all will tie in to what Feldenkraist's position as far as why we lose interest in others, as well as my particular point and my developmental education's a little bit more in depth to why we lose in touch with others or desires with others. But I had an opportunity to meet this particular author. He's a holistic health practitioner. I had a chance to meet him in Miami, and I went down with a friend of mine who was an ex-girlfriend, but still a good friend. We went down and we talked about him on the way down. Every time I would listen to his material on YouTube or I would read his books, it gave me more of a position to how our conversations could go and how we were like-minded, not just him bringing me to a new viewpoint, but from all the viewpoints I had prior to that, or the experiences I had prior to experiencing his literature and his education. So I brought it to the point where I actually, I didn't consciously sit around thinking that we were friends or anything like that. It's actually more of a subconscious move that we do. We don't sit around, and that is a clinically diagnosable condition when you sit there and you fabricate a reality and make somebody a friend that you've never met. But for me, this wasn't like I was sitting around going, yeah, me and Paul. Nothing like that. It was, I would bump into somebody else with a differing viewpoint, and they would share their viewpoint. And I would say, well, this is not accurate to my viewpoints because of this or that. But I may have found myself failing to really fully articulate my experience. And therefore I would interject, how would the conversation go if, now again, this is on the subconscious or a mid-conscious level, not on the conscious mind, where I'm sitting around talking to myself like that. It was just more thinking and kind of fantasizing how things would go if that person were a part of the conversation with me. So I fabricated I created the idea of Paul, which he assisted by putting out the videos, writing of the books, and all those things. And I kind of got to the point where I felt like he was a great ally of mine. Now, being an ally, meaning that if we were to have a conversation, I felt that I'd blow him out of the water with my revelations of experiences in life and all the rest of this wonderful stuff. And that Paul would accept me quickly as a friend, because I felt that I would accept him very quickly as a friend. That kind of experience is what I mean. There's very little information that I actually was given to his whole life, but more of what he wanted you to know about what he did with his life. And what he wanted me to know, in a sense, without necessarily putting the me as Chad, but his group, the people that followed his education, that were inspired by his education. Not me as an individual. I had no knowledge of my existence, other than there was a human being out there that might consume his knowledge. That's it. There was no Chad Everett brochures to this gentleman. Then the day that I'd met him. So there was all of this timeline that it was like, how we would be good friends. So we do this. If you follow an author, or you do this with celebrities, or you do this with anyone that you don't quite know, but you have an experience enough to believe you know them. That's the idea of them. It's the profile that you've built about them up until this point. Now, this is pertinent and relevant to the example I started with, which is meeting somebody who meets these needs that you have, whether you're in a relationship or single. You meet people with an idea, and there are things that you're unsatisfied with your life, and you feel that this person has a specific look or behavior, a way they carry themselves, their poise, their body language seems like it would be the thing that actually like fills that void for what you wish to experience. So I met Paul in Miami. And we went to one of the conferences down in Miami. It was a Spin Expo conference, which is also kind of ironic, be it that, you know, him and I are both in the holistic education, him far more advanced than I am, and it's to a great degree. And here we are at a Spin Expo, something that we don't really align with very well. But anyway, so we're there. He walks in the classroom or into the room with all the other, you know, participants. And I finally got my chance to meet him face to face after reading his books for a while and after watching videos and things. And, you know, I somewhat excitedly, because I'm not much for celebrityism. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not one of those people. If, you know, I think Will Ferrell's funny. If he's in town, yeah. And I knew he was in town and he was here to entertain me, I might go out of my way. But if he was in town, I knew it, but he was here on his vacation, I would not bother the man. I'm not that kind of fan of anyone. If I know you, I may go out of the way in order to, you know, actually see you. But if you're offering education or information or entertainment, then I might consume that. But if you're on your own, doing your own thing, you know, same thing I did with Terry Hogan whenever I met him. Nothing. We came across each other in a Nature's Food Patch. Now, I watched wrestling as a child, and I was excited about that stuff as a child. But as I became an adult, I realized that, you know, there are a lot of things that we don't necessarily, you know, we treat people as objects a lot of the times. And I recognized that at a younger age, but not when I was in my 20s. And I let him be. I didn't go up to him and tell him about how great I thought he was and all the rest of this. I just gave him a nod, and then I just proceeded to do my shopping as he did. And that was it. That's how I behave with celebrities. I'm not one of those people that are fanatical about anyone. But I was a little excited to meet Paul because of the like-minded groundedness that I had. So I met him, shook his hand. After the course, which is 8 hours later, we got a chance to speak with him. And I thought this was the opportunity to introduce some of my insights about, you know, the education and philosophies and all kinds of wonderful things. And he showed a great deal of attention to Jessica, the girl that was with me, and pretty much kind of didn't pay any attention to me. So at first it bothered me. You know, I spent all this time creating, you know, like thinking that this person was really going to get and give a damn about what I had thought and felt. And then there was the experience that I had at that moment. And then I thought to myself, how would I feel if I were in his shoes? Like, all right. I get it. He doesn't know me, and I have no, like, there really isn't a reason to be upset with him from that perspective. He doesn't know me, and, you know, there was something that was of that desire and attention for him that was superseded by the behaviors and the way that I had presented myself. So I really lost all of the mild bit of resentment that I first initially felt for, like, you know, it was roughly about 45 seconds worth of sitting there inside of this stew of resentment. And then I'm like, oh, because it just clicked and I got it. If that were me in his shoes, then I probably would behave similar. And I wouldn't want to be faulted to the fact that I'm behaving as a human being behaves in the way that the human being has developed itself to behave. So I lost that upset pretty damn quickly. Now, a lot of people don't do this, and the TV show and the TMZ, they actually thrive on the fact that people get upset and stay upset, and they make a very good living at it because they present a person to behave in a certain way that's a celebrity to some extent, and the people get outraged and upset, and then they get lost in this idea of being pissed off or upset that this particular celebrity was a human being and not the celebrity deity kind of person that they had created them to be, or that their publishers or their agents had created them to be. So I got over it. I got connected to him, and I said, you know what? It's great to meet you. Thank you very much for what you do. And I look forward to more of your work in the future. And that's it. I didn't walk away going, that son of a bitch, he cut me off, or whatever kind of personal way I'd wanted to behave about it. Now, I tell you all of that story to get back to, we'll use a scenario. We'll say that you're single. You are at a, let's say, Starbucks or some other coffee shop, and you happen to see someone walk in who is aesthetically aligned with the person that you have actually fantasized about being with. Whether you watched a lot of television or whatever, you've seen a lot of celebrities and everybody else saying, that's a gorgeous woman or that's a gorgeous man, then you see and qualify because of that kind of stimulus, that conditioning, that that person is also equally attractive. Now, here's a caveat that takes place, is it's how you qualify yourself against somebody who is that attractive. You qualify yourself against somebody who's that attractive by the people you've experienced up until that point. So when you approach somebody you thought was attractive, but within your league, you would walk up to that person and you would try to get that person to find you appealing. Now, in your history, if you've been successful at that, you would raise the bar, almost certainly raise the bar to somebody who would be a little bit out of your league. And then you would continue that process until you got to what would be considerably that 10 out of a possible 10, right? The Bo Derek of women, or the, I don't know who the equivalent of men would be, but the Bo Derek of men, right? That 10 for a man. We'll use Hugh Jackman just because I've been told I favor him to a degree. But it kind of all kidding aside. So you have all of these different reasons to feel that that person is within your ability to get them to be attracted to you. This is still the whole position in this is objectifying a human being. It's making them an object because most of the time people are not authentic and sincere about their approach. Now, you are sitting in the position when you observe somebody else who has a particular posture, who may have a particular amount of objects on their body that exuberate wealth or traditional values or cultural values or traveling, whatever it is that you see and you qualify immediately. Maybe it's a guy with a wristwatch and you think to yourself, well, that looks like a very high-end wristwatch. Who is in their right mind going to pay that much money for a wristwatch like that unless they have the financial abilities to back it up regularly? Then that may be a qualifier for you to say, well, and it's a quick notice. Most of the time we don't sit there and dwell on it and go, oh, there's that wristwatch. It's kind of this thing that we qualify the other person by. So just saying hi to my little boy. There he is. Cameo time for Bino. Okay. So we have this qualifier. We have the way they have their hair done. The length of their hair can even be a value system for you. If it were thought of in the past, it is likely to be persistent in your present, but more of a second nature kind of thing. So it doesn't require conscious thought about it. It just qualifies or it disqualifies. If a person speaks articulately, and you have found that being intelligent, articulate, either one, it can be the same, but also at the same time, you don't necessarily need to be intelligent in order to be articulate. That just means that you are capable of communicating using a vast array of vocabulary, or a vast lexicon, if you will. Now, whenever it comes to all of these different variables, you bring it into, you perceive the person and you start a profile. Now, this is the same as doing any profiles. If you worked in psychology, you understand that statement by as soon as somebody comes in, you start a profile on the individual by all of their behaviors and what you're looking to qualify as a classification of disorder or condition to society or to individuals' well-being. And you start your profile. You open up this file and you just start putting information in. Well, it's exactly what you do when you meet someone. Now, you may look at them and aesthetically, initially, you don't know how long it took them to get into that particular shape. You don't know how long they spend at the gym or how long they're in front of the mirror, all of this stuff, right? You only know that the person has stricken you as being attractive. They may speak with great deal of attention to other people. There's different things that we find attractive about another person that is extremely quick. We qualify it very quickly. And we say, I like that about you. I do like that about you. I'm not so crazy about that other thing, but this stuff, initially when you meet somebody, the first few moments are very critical in your developing a profile, but it's not unobtainable or it's not unachievable to overcome that particular thing. So you meet them and you think to yourself, well, you walk with good posture, you must take your health seriously, or whatever. There's a lot of different ways. It depends on your background knowledge, right? But we socially believe somebody with good posture also radiates good health. That's not uncommon if you ask people or poll people for that particular information. So you meet somebody, you are perceiving all kinds of things about their profile. You're developing their profile with them, and then you have whatever it is that you have, right? So you come to some type of conclusion. That person may not be obtainable in your viewpoint. And the more attention and favor they show you, the more excited you may get, and most likely will get, about that person showing you attention, especially if they seem to be out of your league. So as you get to know them more, you build more of a profile. All 5 senses come into play on this. But first, the sense of sight and smell may be the most obvious ones that you're developing the person's profile by. You meet them, you hear them. There's another element, right? So there's 3 of the senses that come into play. So you listen to them, you see them, you're watching their behaviors, you smell them. Their pheromones are very real. People's pheromones are a very real expression of human beings. We do have pheromones, as well as colognes. That's why we wear colognes, is to try to create more of a qualifying acceptance factor to other people. You wear a specific cologne or perfume that other people like, but you yourself like. If you both like the same scent, you have more common ground. So you're creating more common ground opportunities. I like that perfume you're wearing. Usually when you hear that, it has some degree of value because you feel like you've been accepted to a degree. You've been accepted by your preference of scent. So then the way that you speak is the way that they hear you. The way that your body behaves is the way that they see you. Now, still, there's not enough of a profile built yet, but there's enough skeleton to the profile. But it's not a full profile yet. It's just the skeleton of the profile. Now you have a lot of gaps because you don't know the person's education. You don't know the person's you don't know their physiology, that's for sure. You may see it and think to yourself that there's a particular level of health present, but you don't know that necessarily. You may also not know, or you do not at this point still know their psychology, their philosophy, what they use as a working means, their integrity. You don't know a lot about this individual yet. You just know a few things that are more superficial, just because only superficial being early in the development of the person's profile. Not superficial as in not mattering or not having value or depth. It's just the first stages of a profile's development. Now you meet this again, you've met this person, you've talked to this person. If they start showing you a favor of desire, as you may feel yourself, you allow this thing to start growing more. This attraction, this connection to grow a bit more. So as this thing continues to grow, you start filling in voids that are necessary for you to fill in order for you to really build a profile. Now, you can overhype the person by thinking to yourself, this person is going to like this or that about me, or that this person is not going to like this or that about me, or whatever, right? You know that anyone watching this has gone through this experience where you fabricate all kinds of things. You're filling in the voids. I don't know what time this person likes to go to bed, but I do know that we talk late on the phone. We're getting to know each other. The excitement continues to build. But every time you get a little bit more excited, you may get a little out of hand or a little out of what has been offered as far as information, and fantasize more about how the future may occur for you and this person. And then at the moment that you get more opportunities, so you get closer and closer, and then finally you get to the point you can touch and or taste this person. Now, I won't get into too much of the descriptions for those two, but you can kind of get where I'm going with this. As you continue, maybe you even hug and you embrace the person, and the way that they hug you makes you feel more wanted and desired. You might take that from the initial hug to sex, right in your mind, but the other person may not be ready for that or desiring that immediately, or they may fight that desire and want to develop more substance to the relationship before it rushes off into sex. So you have that crosses your mind as well, which that type of embrace is an embrace of acceptance. What greater acceptance experience can you have other than sex, right? As far as a physical qualifier. Intimacy is not fully just a physical qualifier. There's an emotional and psychological qualifier that follows with intimacy. But these are the superficial development portions of your profile for another person. You're also telling them what you want them to know about you. So you see, as they learn all about you, which some people do start off wanting people to know everything that they can possibly know about you, or that you can possibly teach them about you. So you may tell them that, everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. You may tell them everything. The other person may be happy that you're showing it, but you see, you're still qualifying what you tell them. You just don't necessarily, and you could only be qualifying it in the fact that it's the only thing that comes to top of mind. You may not talk about other things that are less desirable just because they haven't come to mind. Some things we hide from other people, not all. Some things we just don't even think to mention. So we continue to build these profiles. As you are able to experience the person through those 5 senses, you build more of a profile. And then you'll get to a point where the inflated idea, or the idea of the person versus who they really are, conflicts with itself. And then it happens. Something they do or say finally pushes you to the point to realize that they're not living up to who you want them to be. And then your behaviors towards them may very well be trying to control them to behave the way you wish for them to be, which is the common relationship. The common grown-up in the wilds of suburbia relationship is, I want you to behave a certain way. Now I'm going to start punishing you. Not directly, still directly, but not to the concept of what most people may consider direct, is like, I'm going to take some attention away from you. I'm going to withhold a little bit of love or a little bit of the desirable expressions that I have towards you to get you to behave the way I want you to behave. You didn't take the trash out when I asked you to. And then you get a little cold, or you remove some emotion from the person and become a little more indifferent. That is a conditioning value. You're trying to get the person to shift to behave a specific way for your desires. Now, I want my relationship to go my way. A lot of times, your relationship is your relationship, not our relationship, or you and the other person's relationship. It's not a we-based thing. It is a childish I-based thing. Now, I don't mean childish as an insult. I mean childish as an underdeveloped position. So you continue to build out this profile. Some people go into it and they try to force the other person to become the person they want them to be. Other people go at it, they realize they're not the person that they fantasize them to be, and they simply lose interest. Now, as they lose interest, isn't that anyone did anything wrong necessarily. When you fantasize a reality with somebody, that's not always a very mature position. Now, fantasizing reality with somebody else is not unhealthy, but it's what you do about what you create in the fantasy. If you wish for the other person to develop themselves in a certain way, did you wish that in acceptance for the other person by listening to what they really wish to experience in their life? Or is it what you project onto the other person, wishing for them to be a certain person that they are not, but you want them to be another person, right? They look good enough to be your partner, but they may not behave good enough to be your partner. They may not have enough to be your partner. They may not have the motivation enough to be your partner, but they still look good enough to be your partner. You see, with this is actually to go directly at the profile values. This is why we lose attention and interest in relationships, and why we can go from 100% all in to, I don't want to answer the phone or answer a text message or whatever, and usually it's backed up with I'm sorry, I was just really busy. It's that the person doesn't have the developmental abilities to help others out. They're too concerned and consumed with developing themselves, which is perfectly fine. I'm not downing it. I'm just stating that that is a value. And a lot of times when you do not have the ability to help another person develop themselves, is one, a reflection that you don't have the ability to develop yourself, or you don't have the energy available to help another person because you're doing your own development very inefficiently. It's still effective at the point that it is what you know to do with yourself as far as how to develop yourself, but you don't know how to do it to the most effective means that is all of humanity has to offer, because you don't know how to seek it out for better answers or more effective abilities to develop yourself. But yet you do have something that you're doing, but it's causing you developmental fatigue, which means you're not caring enough, or you don't have the emotional energy or physical energy enough to help another person develop themselves. This usually creates a chaotic experience in life because now you're waiting for somebody else to come along that will be the right one, because they're on a task of developing themselves as well. But you see, you've developed a pattern that I don't have it enough to help you, but I have it enough to help me. It becomes a relationship of two different people, not two people working on a common cause. So you see, even if you're waiting for the one may ultimately be the one that breaks you pretty well, because you seem to be well fortified in yourself, in the sense that you are willing to develop yourself but not willing to develop another person, and then expect the other person to want to work on the relationship with you. But yet you've identified and attracted somebody else that behaves just like you do to a great extent. And that person also does it for themselves and doesn't have the desire or the exercised ability to help another person develop. You see, even if you are working on yourself and you have no plan to get to the point you can actually assist other people by who they are, not by what you think they should be, then you're also developing yourself into a folly if you believe that relationships should occur with relative ease. So we get into these situations and we believe that the other person lost interest because the other person is a jerk. They may have beat you to the punch at the fact that they realized that the relationship wasn't going the way they wanted to, and the profile has showed up in such a way that they realized that you're not the person that they thought they wanted to be with, or you're not really the person that they were wanting you to be. You've lost interest, or that person has lost interest because their profile has become more in-depth. That doesn't mean anything's wrong with anyone in this scenario. It means that people are underdeveloped, but that's not an implication of, or I'm sorry, implication. There we go. Sorry. An implication that anyone is wrong. I don't make people wrong like that. I seek opportunities to develop ourselves further. And anytime I feel myself pushed into a corner, I realize I hold the paintbrush, and that all that I thought was pushing me is really me pushing myself to that corner, painting my way into the corner. That's all it is for me. So with that, I hope you understand that we do have the opportunities to develop ourselves. I hope that Moshe Feldenkraist's lessons were well translated through me in this conversation, as well as my own developmental lessons and developmental educations, has brought about a better understanding to why we do not keep attention for an indefinite time period when we meet somebody who we think are the answers to all of our relationships' woes. It's the profile. Our senses have bathed in the experience of the other person. Our senses are full in the sense that they have developed enough of a profile to know whether the other person is desirable to be with long-term or not. That's the simplicity of it. Now, what you do with this information is you can either say, oh, that was really nice, that was interesting, or I disagree with this, or I disagree with that. If you don't try it on and actually put a little bit of effort into your own development, you'll consistently be the person that keeps complaining about relationships and keep going through the upset and keep going through all these challenges. So it's your choice. So with that, in closing, the five senses play a big role in why we gain an interest in somebody else and then lose it. This is not always an intimate experience. This can be like an intimate relationship type, a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend kind of thing, or civil unions or whatever. It doesn't have to be that. It can be friendships as well. You may have like-minded ground with somebody. I had just a quick example. There was a gentleman that him and I had great conversations. We went through all kinds of dynamic places in the conversation where we would speak with great conviction and all the rest of this stuff, but with also this like eagerness to learn more. It was really great. It was very interesting. And then I realized a little bit more of the depth of how he viewed me in the relationship, friendship that we're developing. One day he had messaged me and told me that I had seemed like he told me that I was like Jim Jones. For those of you that don't know who Jim Jones is a Jim Jones cult were the ones that actually coined drinking the Kool-Aid. They were the ones that they were Christian religious extremists that moved to South America, they had started their cult here, found that there was a lot of persecution and resistance and resentment towards their movement, their religious belief system, and they moved it to South America. And they later killed a congressman who came to try to help family members leave, because family members are the people that went down. They just couldn't leave. Everything they did to try to leave was resisted, even with violence, control with firearms and the rest of this stuff. And people were beat to death when they tried to leave. And there were all kinds of horrific things that happened, from an idea or a movement of love to terror. So this particular congressman went down with a bunch of family members trying to get these individuals that did want to leave to give them asylum to leave this particular cult in South America. And ultimately, the day that they ended up killing most of the family members that came down, and the congressman, as they ended up back at the airport, who left under the guise that everyone that was leaving were allowed to leave, and Jim Jones was okay with it, and the rest of the family, they called them the family, were okay with it. And they ended up basically killing all but just a handful of people at the airstrip. They blocked the planes and shot them up and killed the congressman and the rest. But anyway, ultimately, long story short, he accused me, because of my position of being open to other people's thought processes, as being more of a Jim Jones, trying to start a cult movement. I found that this like-minded conversation that I had with this individual was built on a profile that wasn't completely open. Now, I didn't turn resentfully at this individual at this point. I actually talked through this and actually got to a better resolved position, being that there were things that he was using to disqualify my experiences in life and my intention to offer insight to others by this opportunity to have other people know another factor. So I also gave him, the value that he's gone through some things that other people haven't, and that they have value just the same as mine, even though his may have some degree of extreme that I may not have experienced. Doesn't mean that neither one of our experiences in offering that experience to others is invalid. So, but the profile was there, and as we continued to flesh out the profile with each other, we came to a dividing point that I realized was upsetting in the relationship for the two of us. We're still friends, by the way, but we had to come to a resolve to that upset, and we have done that successfully, in my opinion. So with that, I am by no means a Jim Jones. That's actually one of the most highly insulting positions you can offer somebody who really wishes just to offer insights to others and to get them to live their lives. But I'm not really insulted by it. Can't say that I wasn't for a period of time, but I'm not at this point at all. But I did share that for a reason. It doesn't have to be intimate relationships, a boyfriend, girlfriend, in order for you to have profiles. You have profiles for everyone and everything. You do it with your bosses. You do it with your friends. You do it with people you don't know. You fill in the voids for everything that you don't know yet. And as your senses give you another level of understanding, you start moving out what you filled the void in with before, whether that's like or dislike for the person, and you put in what you are knowing now, which is experiential knowledge. So that's it. All right, boys and girls, Moshe Feldenkrais, great books. He's got more than this by far, but these are just two great books to look into, The Potent Self and Body and Mature Behavior. Again, this is Chad Everett Brochures. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, and this is the episode on why we lose interest in others. So if you would, and you've enjoyed this, my wonderful ramblings and the rest, or however you would describe it, please, by all means, share it with whomever you like. And don't forget, you can comment in the comment section below, as well as you can also email this or put it on social media. You can share it in many different ways. Also, you can like it on Google+. You can do one of those little 1+ signs on it, and you can share it on there as well. So again, this is Chad Everett Brochures. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to our next video.